Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Is the Rajya Sabha proving to be the government's nemesis or even its Waterloo? With critical legislation either stalled or threatened with rejection, how serious a problem does the NDA government face because it doesn't have the numbers in the upper house? And what should it be doing to tackle this difficulty? That's the discussion in part 2. But first, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh has been summoned as an accused to answer questions in connection with the allocation of a coal block to Hindalco in 2005. The charges he could face includes criminal conspiracy, criminal breach of trust and corruption. But does the CBI court have good grounds to be suspicious of Dr. Manmohan Singh's behaviour, or is it over-interpreting and perhaps overreacting by taking this step? That's the first discussion tonight. And now joining me to discuss the court summons against Dr. Manmohan Singh is Congress MP and spokesperson Abhishek Singhvi, the Minister for Environment Prakash Javadekar, the well-known Supreme Court lawyer Sanjay Hegde, and the former editor of The Hindu, Siddharth Vardarajan. Abhishek Singhvi, how do you respond to the fact that former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh has been summoned as an accused in the Hindalco coal allotment case and has to answer questions connected with criminal conspiracy, criminal breach of trust and corruption?
Very regrettable, Karan, and sad. I would like to see that minority of one in this country who thinks that Manmohan Singh is corrupt under the Prevention of Corruption Act. But apart from subjective thought, I think legally, for receiving a representation openly and transparently in writing, forwarding it to the Coal Secretary, having endorsements of it from the Odisha Chief Minister, discussing in the Ministry, Coal Secretary getting it down the line, and then, Karan, allotting it 70% to a public sector and 15% to another entity and 15% to Hindalco. If this can land you in trouble on a PC Act, I think decision making is dead in this country. Okay. I have great respect for the courts. I've spent a lifetime in law, but I think appellate recourse, and I don't mean appellate technically, but I mean recourse to higher judicial authorities, whether by, as lawyers call it, a quashing petition or otherwise, I am certain in law it is bound to succeed. There are two closure reports, Karan. Twice the CBI has said close the case. I agree. The judge is entitled to take a contrary view, but it's the rarest of exceptional situations, okay, and I don't think it ought to have been done.
Sanjay Hegde, let me bring you in for the opinion of an independent lawyer who's not connected to any political party. The case is to do with the allocation of a coal block in Orissa to Hindalco, which happened when the screening committee's original recommendation was overturned. But it happened with the endorsement and recommendation in full of the state government, and there is absolutely no trace whatsoever of any quid pro quo. So how well established is the suspicion, and it is only a suspicion, that this is somehow an instance of criminal conspiracy, criminal breach of trust and corruption?
Well, there are certain problems with the law as it stands also, and especially the section in the Prevention of Corruption Act, which says that if you confer a pecuniary advantage without any public interest, then you could have committed criminal misconduct. Now, even without, technically speaking, even without having any quid pro quo, if there is a case where public interest has not been served and somebody has been given a pecuniary advantage, a case could be made out. That would entirely go by the reading of the documents, by what the prosecution is able to prove in court, and technically or otherwise, it looks to me like that the courts have erred on the side of caution here, that it's better to let the matter go to trial and thereafter let law take its own course.
When you say the courts have erred on the side of caution, what the court or the judge has done is to take the most extreme interpretation of the law, taking advantage of the vagaries of the way the law is actually written, to hold it against Dr. Manmohan Singh and not given him any benefit of any discretion whatsoever.
It's not only Dr. Manmohan Singh. Because
no,
you must also notice that there's the company,
other six as well. Absolutely.
The company, yeah, and its officials.
It's happened to all of them.
It's happened to all of them, and it's they who have got an advantage, if any.
Let me bring you in, Prakash Javadekar, and put it like this. The charges of conspiracy, breach of trust and corruption hinge on the fact that Kumaramangalam Birla met Dr. Manmohan Singh to seek redressal for what he thought was a grievance. He then met the Coal Secretary, Mr. Parak, to seek similar redressal. And then when that redressal happened, the judge believes that there was some collusion between the three, and therefore there is grounds for suspecting conspiracy and breach of trust. But this is how redressal of grievance happens. Industrialists meeting the government is quite common. There's nothing surreptitious or wrong about it. So why interpret it as collusion and conspiracy?
First, as this is not the government's decision but a court summons, and my two lawyer friends, I am not lawyer, and therefore I am not commenting on the court order because that's a small thing. But I agree with Abhishek Singhvi on one thing, that this is regrettable. But this is, I will say it, rephrase it, this is most unpleasant thing that the Prime Minister is being summoned by the court. Congress needs to introspect why this happened. Because I'm on that point. The whole coal block allocation became a scam and ultimately got cancelled by the Supreme Court. And therefore, yesterday I was speaking in the House and Abhishek Manu Singhvi was also there. I said it. I never knew that there is a court case also. But I said, what you did of Manmohan Singh, such a great economist prime minister, and आपने उनसे ऐसे काम करवा लिए कि आपने उनको सीबीआई के चौखट पर खड़ा कर दिया. ये कल मैंने शाम को बोला इसी समय. And that is why I always feel definitely sympathetic for Manmohan Singh, but absolutely Congress owes the responsibility.
In other words, you're saying Dr. Manmohan Singh is carrying the can and the blame, but the actual fault lies with the Congress party. Say yes or no to that, Mr. Javadekar.
Yes, yes, absolutely true.
Siddharth Varadarajan, I'm going to go back.
And not in this case. 1 minute. Not in this case only. It's all overall coal scam, what is known and what is cancelled. It's a Congress which is guilty.
I understand. Siddharth Varadarajan, Prakash Javadekar has widened the discussion to say that the blame and the fault lies with Congress. Dr. Manmohan Singh is only, in a sense, the fall guy. I'm moving away from that. I'm going to come back and concentrate narrowly for a moment on the Manmohan Singh instance that we're actually talking about. What do you make of the fact that on two separate occasions, as Abhishek Singhvi pointed out, the CBI actually claimed they did not have prosecutable evidence and that they wanted to close the case? The judge, on grounds that I think are what have so far been revealed, because in fact the case was presented for review by the Prime Minister's office, and the Prime Minister's office then sent 2 or 3 letters of reminder, has decided there are grounds here for suspecting something more like a conspiracy or breach of trust. And therefore the judge has overturned the recommendation from the CBI. Do you think the judge was justified, or do you think he's over-interpreting the mere initiative taken by the PMO and the letters sent as reminders by the PMO?
Karan, my sense is based on information that's in the public domain. This does appear to be a rather weak case. And even though one can never put it past the CBI to try to shut a case due to political reasons, political pressure, political convenience, or to open or accelerate a case for the same political reasons, to my unexpert eye, and I'm not a lawyer, the facts that are out there before us don't look very convincing as far as the allegation of criminal wrongdoing is concerned. Perhaps the judge has more information at his disposal, and that's why he's being cautious. I think there is a political indictment that is, to my mind, more important for Manmohan Singh and the Congress party, but narrowly on the legality of this case, I am a little surprised that matters have gone this far. But one would have to defer to the judgment of this particular judge, what happens in the hearing, and finally what happens in the appeals process. I think this is the beginning of a long drawn-out affair that we're seeing.
Gentlemen, I'll come to the political indictment that this case represents, both for Dr. Manmohan Singh and Congress in a moment's time. But first, Abhishek Singhvi, let me approach this issue of the question marks around Dr. Manmohan Singh in a somewhat different way with you. The press release issued by the PMO in 2013 on this matter makes it clear that Kumar Mangalam Birla wrote directly to the Prime Minister on the 7th of May 2005, and 18 days later, the letter was forwarded to the Coal Ministry for investigation and examination. Clearly, therefore, the process began with Mr. Birla approaching the PM. Now, if something thereafter went wrong, and I accept there's a big, huge if, but if something thereafter went wrong, the Prime Minister would have to be questioned because the process started with him. So, technically, and not just as a matter of over-interpretation, the judge is right to summon him for questioning.
No, there is a difference, Karan. You are partly right and partly wrong. The questioning part was done after the first closure report. The judge said, why don't you question him again? They went back and questioned him. And Dr. Manmohan Singh earlier and now has repeated, I am an ordinary citizen. As far as questioning is concerned, please come. I have nothing to hide. I will participate. He was on no high horse. Subsequent to that questioning, the second time the CBI filed a report, they said, we stand by our earlier closure report. There is nothing in it. Now there, at that point, there is a discretion with the judge. The judge's discretion should be exercised not to issue summon for 2 or 3 very important reasons. Number one, Karan, Mr. Hegde is quite right. Ironically, that change in the law that you can have pecuniary benefit to somebody without public interest being an offence is an amendment done by the Congress. But there is one crucial missing element. It is criminality we are talking about. You have to show by circumstantial or other additional evidence that there is some mens rea, some criminal intent. The course of events, as you yourself said, a person writing openly, meeting, calling on the Prime Minister, and then going down the line, getting us 15% allocation along with the Chief Minister's backing is hardly indicative of criminal intent.
Okay.
And the second thing is, we are talking in terms of prosecutable evidence. It is not that, you see, an error, let me assume, I am not suggesting there is an error at all, but assume there is an error. There has to be supporting circumstantial material of an evidentiary value suggesting conspiracy, criminal intent, a malevolent mind to benefit somebody, because you can't interpret the section. And the last point, Karan, is, you know, when we get into political rhetoric on something which is legal, then it sounds very nice. But a political party is not an accused in this matter. The Congress is not an accused. So it sounds nice to say, and I agree with Mr. Javadekar, perhaps we would have done the same thing had I been speaking in Parliament. But we are now talking cold hard facts, hard law.
Okay.
A political party is not there. The charge is not conspiracy between the political party, the political masters, Mr. Manmohan Singh and other people. So let's stick to the facts.
Let me pick up on one reason why possibly Abhishek Singhvi is wrong in saying that the judge should have exercised his discretion in favor of Dr. Manmohan Singh, because the judge clearly hasn't. And that's this. If something went wrong in the allocation when the screening committee's original recommendation was reversed, then Mr. Parikh's recommendation to reverse the decision could not have become final unless the Prime Minister agreed with it. And when the Prime Minister agreed with it, he didn't simply sign on the dotted line. He must have exercised his judgment. Therefore, for both those reasons, if something went wrong, the PM is part of the process. And if you believe so, then you're wrong not to exercise your discretion against him rather than in his favor.
See, it's not only a question of exercising discretion on the part of the judge. The judge, in fact, is overruling the prosecution's recommendation that the matter be closed. So the judge has come to a determination on the same set of facts which are available to the prosecution that no, the prosecution seems to have erred and that there is material to go to a trial.
Do you think the judge was wrong to do this?
Well, that's what judges are for. The judge has to take a call.
Can I interrupt and ask this? When a judge overrules the prosecution, overrules the investigating agency, the CBI, and decides from the same evidence that the opposite can be concluded, is there a hint or a suggestion that he's biased? And I ask that very carefully and advisedly.
No, that is a power which is reserved to judges, because very often investigators also could probably get it wrong. And sometimes when that power exists, and it has to be, the judge takes a call on it, saying that maybe it's better to let the process go forward, so that there is everything is on record and there is an ultimate vindication.
In other words, this is the judge exercising his prerogative. People may question it, but he has the right to do what he wants.
Absolutely.
Mr. Javadekar, you took a very interesting line when this news first broke. You said the BJP has been vindicated in their stand. I believe those were your exact words this morning. But this is just a summons for questioning. Dr. Manmohan Singh hasn't been formally charged and he may never be formally charged. So what vindication is this? And particularly when Congress isn't involved,
No, I have not
what vindication?
I have not said that our stand is vindicated on this issue because it's a purely one case which judges summoned for, and not as a, I hope that it is not as Prime Minister but as Coal Minister, because all coal allocation ultimately are vetted by the Coal Minister, and therefore that's a nitty-gritty which I have not gone into. The basic point, let us understand one another factor. On this case, a project proponent, industrialist or any other, meeting the minister or the Prime Minister, and Prime Minister asking somebody, the officers to look into it, is not bad or banned. The issue is that Prakash Parakh has said, and that's the central of the whole coal scam, that when the auction route was suggested and Prime Minister agreed to it, but still never carried out. 5 years lapsed just from here to there, and this option was not. Yesterday Digvijay Singh said,
can I interrupt?
1 minute.
Okay.
Digvijay Singh said that Manmohan ji wanted to bring the auction. Then who stopped? It was the Congress, because चिट्ठी कहां से आती थी and how things discretionary किसको मिला, that's the issue.
I accept the point you're making.
To that extent I said we are vindicated.
I accept that the qualification you're making, but I want to point this out. Two separate things are happening. One, the Prime Minister and Mr. Parakh wanted to go down the auction route and weren't able to do so. 7 or 8 years lapsed and it didn't happen, and maybe Congress and Mrs. Gandhi intervened and maybe they didn't. But that's one issue, and it's a separate issue from the belief that this reallocation of a coal block happened because there was some collusion between an industrialist, the coal secretary, and the Prime Minister, which amounts to conspiracy and amounts to criminal breach of trust. You can't conflate the two together, can you? Because they're two separate things. They may have been happening simultaneously.
I'm not. That is what I'm saying. I'm not. I have not commented anything on this particular case.
Okay.
On the other hand, I see no fault in meeting the industrialist, he making their presentation or case point, and then you take judicious decision and ask the department to evaluate. That's a routine process.
All right.
The issue here is the overall coal scam, and why Manmohan Singh has to face this. Because see, why it was not given to any other minister but was kept with the Prime Minister. And Prime Minister owes a responsibility to an extent. In CWC case, CWG scam, what has happened?
Can I interrupt you? Let's not go to CWG. Coal wasn't kept with the Prime Minister. Coal ended up with the Prime Minister because the coal minister had to resign. Yeah. He didn't keep it. He had to take it on because the coal minister was forced by circumstances to resign. Shibu Soren, if you remember.
But then he could have allotted it to somebody else.
But that doesn't make for criminal conspiracy. That still doesn't make for criminal conspiracy.
I'm giving you an analogy. If Suresh Kalmadi, being the last signatory, is responsible for CWG things, I'm not defending him. But if that logic is correct that he was the last signatory, though there were 15 IAS officers.
Absolutely, I use that myself. Yes, I accept your point.
But now, here is the last signatory.
I accept that. I accept your point, and I was making that argument a moment ago to both Abhishek Singhvi and Sanjay Hegde. You're repeating the argument I was making. Let me now move, gentlemen, very quickly to the political ramifications of this. And first, Siddharth Varadarajan, to what damage this is going to do to Dr. Manmohan Singh's reputation. As far as the lay public is concerned, would you accept that if he is summoned as an accused, then they will say prima facie he must also be guilty? And will that assumption, even if it turns out to be wrong, have damaged Dr. Manmohan Singh irreparably regardless of the outcome?
Look, Karan, my sense is that the political legacy of Dr. Manmohan Singh is already firmly in place. The way in which the Congress party lost the election tells us that large numbers of people, large section of the electorate considered him to have run a corrupt government, a government that gave handouts to the corporate sector under one excuse or the other, and caused an enormous loss to the exchequer, whether it was spectrum.
So you mean no further damage can be done? Damage has already been done. This can only add.
Well, in a sense, and I think the money that's been raised by auctioning coal, I think has done more to settle this question than the summons by this judge.
I just come back then to the question of damage. Are you saying this is doing damage, or are you saying so much damage has been done it hardly matters if this does a bit more? Which are you saying?
No, I'm saying whatever damage has to be done has already been done.
Okay. In other words, this is only an additional. It doesn't matter.
I mean, this will affect his, I suppose, his individual standing, but I mean, the political legacy is settled.
As a lawyer, and again as a lawyer without party political connections, how serious is the situation, or maybe I mean the predicament, Dr. Manmohan Singh faces?
Well, it's as serious as the companies also, but he has appellate rights. He'd move the High Court. He or Hindalco, I expect, would move the move the High Court, and I think that a judge with constitutional protection is much more likely to look at it dispassionately.
In other words, when it comes to the appellate stage of the High Court, the judge will be very different in how he exercises his discretion.
He would be much more independent in the way he would not be scared about what people think.
In other words, the lower court judge was not independent because he was scared of public opinion, and therefore, as you put it deftly, he erred on the side of caution, which I said meant he erred in the sense of taking the most extreme interpretation against Dr. Manmohan Singh.
Well, I didn't say that.
But I did, and you haven't disagreed. Very quickly, Abhishek Singhvi, I'm going to take up that point made by Prakash Javadekar. I'm moving away from Dr. Manmohan Singh. After the Congress party lost the national elections, after you lost a whole spate of state elections, and after then the mysterious disappearance of Rahul Gandhi and the terrible demoralization of your party, this is another crippling blow to Congress's image.
You have now broadened it completely from a individual incident of a summons to a large political debate. I cannot gauge without a proper sample opinion poll about these perceptions.
You
there could
suddenly have
equally be a
faith in
perception, and
opinion
I believe,
polls for
Karan,
once.
I can equally have a whole set of public opinions which will not have a minority of one considering Manmohan Singh guilty of corruption, also appreciating him for the way in which he will participate in the legal process, never hesitate to be questioned. And I do not think that people will have such short memories as to not make a distinction between case X, as Mr. Javadekar mentions, about the CWG, with the executive involvement of Mr. Suresh Kalmadi, totally different facts, versus Mr. Manmohan Singh being a signatory of the coal minister. I mean, this is actually not chalk and cheese. It is Zameen Asman ka farak.
Okay, the nice, interesting and touching thing is that the Congress party spokesperson, who has no faith in opinion polls when they come out predicting election results, this time wants to wait for an opinion poll before he decides whether damage has been done to the image of his party. I'm delighted for once you're prepared to accept the veracity of polls. Mr. Javadekar, very quickly, this is obviously a God-sent development for the BJP. But it also concerns an individual who is Prime Minister of India, and a man whose office, at any rate, one wants to always respect. So how far will your party pursue this issue and this incident to get political capital out of?
Rajesh.
No, we have not done any kind of, and this is credit to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he doesn't believe in politics of vengeance. Anytime, in 9 months, we have not indulged in any kind of such thing. The issue here is, at least Congress must learn now a lesson that what they did to Manmohan Singh was bad, what they did to the nation through coal scam was bad. Now at least when the transparent coal auction is happening, they should support and not oppose.
That is in fact a note on which I will end this particular discussion, because it touches very closely, as you will soon discover, on the issue we're going to take up after the break.